And let's read the big news from Timcast.com. Senate Republicans and Manchin block Women's Health Protection Act. Quote, make no mistake, it is not Roe v. Wade codification. It is an expansion. It wipes 500 state laws off the books, said Senator Joe Manchin. So let's just do this. That's simple. The Democrats were acting like this was going to be federal codification of Roe v. Wade. That's not true. And I will just go straight to it with Section 4 of the bill, which is 3755, which states, there can be no limitations or requirements on a prohibition on abortion after fetal viability when, in the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider, continuation of the pregnancy would pose a risk to the pregnant patient's life or health. I just want to pause real quick and assess that provision right there and just say, it says after viability, meaning the baby can survive. You're saying you can terminate the baby even if it could survive because the mother's health may be at risk. I understand if their argument is end the pregnancy, if it said end the pregnancy, but preserve the life of the baby. But it didn't say that. Quite literally, they're like, we can kill a baby if the woman would be medically harmed by the pregnancy. Why not just take the baby out and let it live?
Maybe they're assuming that if the removal of the baby would kill the woman, then, but either way, they're going to have to take the body out, whether it's alive or not.
Exactly. Also, this idea of an exemption for health, this is a term which is used very vaguely. So they're actually able to say something along the lines of, well, we have determined that this woman might be negatively affected with respect to something like depression if she has a child. Therefore, the abortion is a medical necessity.
I think it's just they need to meet their blood quotas to sacrifice to Moloch.
Yeah. I'm starting to
That's
agree.
all it is.
Yeah.
Blood quotas to Moloch. But I
Just
think you have to do
murder
that.
babies.
I think it has to be in person, so I don't know if it would count.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah,
I think
okay.
you're wrong.
Yeah, bloodlust is no joke. That's from eating all
it's
the
real.
animal meat.
I don't think so. There are a lot of people who eat
This
animal
got
meat that don't kill
crazy
babies.
real fast.
Yeah,
I
it's such a strange
Talking
choice.
about the history of humans.
I'm just I just made a joke.
Joking.
And
I
I
liked
just
it.
opened up a can of worms right there.
Wow.
Can you tell if this meant like if the woman would die if the baby was taken out of the body at 8 months, or is this like if the woman would survive if the body
After
was
viability, it's the weirdest thing.
What is viability?
It means the baby can survive on its own.
Without like a breathing apparatus or like an incubator or something?
There are humans that are considered viable humans that need a breathing apparatus. Viability just means the baby can survive without the mother at this point. Maybe that does mean they got to put it in an ICU and a respirator or something. I really don't get the argument that it's like, this baby could survive, but we should kill it. I genuinely don't get it. I don't understand.
I mean, it's the purpose, though, when you think about it, because most people, they're not going out and having an abortion because they feel as if something is living off their body that they don't want to live off their body. It's because they don't want to be a parent. So viability or non-viability isn't really a relevant argument to them.
I mean, but it also just speaks to why they haven't actually gone forward. I mean, they could have codified it for the past 50 years, but they're not going to because it puts Democrats in this weird position on where exactly they draw this line, and clearly they drew the line just like so far out of field that we get someone like Joe Manchin.
Well, Manchin is like, he is the savior of the Democratic Party. The reason they don't codify Roe v. Wade is that they need it as a wedge issue. So all of a sudden, Joe Manchin comes along and he's like, oh, I can't do it. And all the Democrats are like, we're trying, but Joe Manchin won't let us.
Vote for us and we'll keep trying.
Exactly. And the Republicans do the same thing. They did it with Obamacare. They could have repealed it, but they were like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. It riles people up.
So do you think it's convenient for them that Joe Manchin is standing in the way, or do you believe that he is actually actively trying to impede it for that reason?
I think it's a perfect storm. Look, Joe Manchin's a West Virginia Democrat, which means he's got to be moderate to right-leaning on these issues.
Exactly.
But I got to be honest, I don't see Joe Manchin getting reelected. That just sounds insane to me at this point. West Virginia went like 86% for Trump. This dude, I just don't see it. So he might just be like, I'll play my role, give the Democrats a chance to keep complaining about these things and never do anything about it.
I pulled up an article from Washington Post that says fetal viability is generally considered to be around 23 or 24 weeks, which is like, 5 to 6 months. And there's no universal consensus. Some hospitals will resuscitate the baby, actively treat babies born in the 22nd week. So it's somewhere around there. I don't know where they got this data, but this is Washington Post.
So I can understand if there's a baby that's considered viable at a certain age and the mom's like dying for some reason and they're like, we're gonna abort the pregnancy, and then the baby dies. I'm like, okay, well, these things happen. They were trying to save life. I just don't understand the idea that they don't explain that. They don't break it down. There should be limitations there. It should be that it should include in that provision, and an attempt to save the life of the baby should be made.
There's a big difference between 6-month viability and 8-month viability. That you're like a human being ready to just bounce outside the skin at 9 months. So like, yeah, I don't know. The word viability is very weird, because if the power goes out, then what does that word even mean anymore?
So if a baby is born at 8 months, but they need to be hooked up to a respirator or breathing machine and the power goes out, could you make the same argument?
You'd have to say like, well, we don't have a breathing machine. Can this thing survive on its own with modern technology? Which in this theoretical situation would be no electricity.
What is it called? What's the pump they call it? You put on your face and pump it?
It's like a
respirator.
respirator.
The respirator?
Yeah, mask.
The pump face mask.
Yeah,
the pump face mask. That's exactly it. That's the medical term, actually.
Yeah, it's true.
But they could put that on the baby and boop, 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 boop.
You have to sit
pump
there.
face
Yeah.
mask it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if oxygen goes out, then you need to figure something else out. And one of the options would be this mask that they use when they're performing resuscitation. When they're performing CPR, they use this. It's a handheld mask to deliver breaths to someone. So you can help someone breathe if the power goes out. You just need to do it.
Are Republicans going to try and do the inverse and ban abortion federally?
That's a good question.
So.
I'm not sure. I mean, I hope so, but I think the Republican Party is really pretty weak.
But I mean, the whole point of Roe versus Wade is that it gives it back to the state. So I mean,
Ending Roe v. Wade,
or returning it. So I mean, ultimately that would, because that's the whole reason why we're kind of in this mess in the first place, in terms of this freakish outrage and them going to Supreme Court Justice's house, because there's this misconception that Roe v. Wade ends and then all of a sudden there's no more abortions just anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, at least on the state level, obviously a place not like California is not going to do that because it's just so heavily Dem, but you would think that the states that are Republican controlled, so then maybe Republicans on the federal level wouldn't feel that pressure necessarily.
I think this attempt right here, Democrats just lost any. I guess the idea is we tried to do it, but because of Manchin, you better go vote, which I just don't see being reality.
They're making it about the filibuster.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't get past filibuster anyway. So it's all
exactly
just pointless. It's pointless.
Well, and then that's because they always just fall back to the filibuster because they have no other thing to fall back on when their things fail.
So was there a filibuster involved in this process?
Nope. They just didn't get the votes.
Yeah.
But even if they did, the filibuster wouldn't allow it. They would need 60 votes. It's not going to happen. So there was this really funny thread from Politico where this Democrat was talking about the economy and giving a speech to other Democratic Party members and politicians. And it was like the other Democrats were shocked, and they were like, but nothing, this is not coming up in the polls. Like, who cares about inflation in the economy? And they were like trying to explain to them it's the economy, stupid. Mm-hmm. But you actually have Democrats who are sitting there right now being like, if there's one thing every American truly cares about this election, it's abortion. Meanwhile, there's a guy like, I have no gas. And they're like, but abortion. Another person goes, I'm hungry. Yes, but abortion. And then someone says, there's no baby formula. You could have aborted. It's like,
that's fair.
That's their argument.
And not only abortion, right? So I've said before, it's all murder, but if you're going to look at the perspective of your average American person, there are even many people who would consider themselves to be in favor of it or not in favor of banning it, who would say 9 months, that's pretty insane. But that's the hill that they're choosing to die on right now.
We're more less restrictive than Europe. We had that whole funny clip of Bill Maher this week saying, "I didn't know this. Did you know this?" And his panels were, "No, we didn't know this."
About Europe,
about how more restrictive they are over there.
Bill Maher has made it's so sad. The end of his career is basically like, are you guys hearing about this thing that happened years ago? I just found out about this thing called the Google. It's like, Bill. We had the conversation about Europe 2 months ago. This dude doesn't have Google. He's never heard of it.
He has rules. New rule.
Yeah. New rule, everyone. You need to Google search something before you talk about it on your show.
Okay.
Let's give Bill credit. He is just the human version of Microsoft Explorer. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
You mentioned, Seamus, that abortion is murder. Technically, it's not. It's just a type of killing right now. But just for specifics, you could.
Wow. If you want to be pedantic,
you feel like it's murder, but it's legally not murder.
Everyone that was killed in the Holocaust was murdered, even though it was legal.
It's like
you could argue that too, but murder is a specific legal definition.
It's like when Stewie on Family Guy said, "It's not that I want to kill Lois; it's that I don't want her to be alive anymore. I want her not to be alive."
So murder is, if I understand, an unlawful killing, and I'm saying the law of our nation might not protect those lives, but that's no law at all.
Yeah, I see. You understand. You think it is murder, but legally
It
it's
is.
not.
According to
If this state-
our country's laws are not recognizing
Yeah,
it as such,
that's
but
like-
our laws are wrong.
That's the whole
is my
problem
point.
in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
Is why it doesn't recognize it
Right.
as such.
I think it's really stupid to define murder as unlawful, but I understand why they would, because the death penalty they argue is legal, but I still think you could call all of these things murder.
Well,
like the intentional killing of another person.
War is where it's like they're not murderers in war. They're killers, but they're not murderers.
I think they're all murderers.
Ah, man, no way, no. If you're protecting yourself and someone's attacking you and you
Well,
kill
not
them, you're not a
necessarily
murderer.
that.
That's
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
that's
not
true.
necessarily
That's
that
a
instance.
little
But I
different,
think the point is, Ian. So if you like.
The
We're in the
intentional-
USSR putting people up against the wall. Technically, that was legal.
Oh, you're
but,
right.
but I wouldn't say, oh, they're not a murderer because that was legal. That person's still a murderer.
This is a good point. I would say maybe it's the aggressive, intentional killing of another person.
Even then, war, like you go into like a machine gun nest and wipe everybody out with a grenade intentionally.
Based.
Yeah, that's not murder. You're killing for a living, you know.
That is an interesting point. I wonder where we could find where's the actual line in what would be a murder.
Sure. I mean, but I would still definitely say an innocent unborn child, you kill them, you fall under
All
the
right,
category
you
of
made an
somebody's committed
excellent
murder.
point that a government could make it legal and then do it and it say, hey, it's not murder because we made it
Exactly.
legal, but like just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right or
Yeah.
good.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
if you
my
look
point.
at
That's my
like
point with
communist
abortion.
China, I dare say that the Mountains of Skulls there and in like Pol Pot's Cambodia would say a different story because those were technically just victims of the government. It wasn't really a murder, right? It
I
just
mean,
didn't
yeah,
kill them.
our
Well, it
unborn
wasn't
baby's
even-
victim of the government.
Was even victim?
Yes,
Right, it wasn't even
100%.
victim. Well, they
Yes.
wouldn't say they're victims. It was necessary cleansing of undesirables. or
Everybody
whatever.
wants to
Yeah.
justify why they get to kill somebody.
Exactly.
That's suspicious.
I understand war, though. In times of war, consider everything out the window. You want to talk about your rights? Good luck when you're in a war. You can talk all day and night about the rights you do have. And I think a person has inalienable rights, but someone with force can try to infringe upon those rights, and you'll have to fight for them.
That's why I thought it was funny when I was in the Marine Corps and going through the training because we were taught the Geneva Conventions and the rights that we had under that, and I'm just thinking, who would actually recognize
Who's gonna
that?
recognize it?
Yeah, no one's gonna recognize that. I mean, if we're truly going up against an enemy that hates us.
I was talking about Vietnam the other day, and I brought up the My Lai massacre. I don't know if you guys are aware. It was like one of
Yeah.
the greatest
Heard of it, yeah.
massacres perpetrated by American troops ever in the history of the United States. It was like, I think, 500 Vietnamese villagers, women, children were burned alive and killed by like 100 troops, like a bunch of
Yeah,
guys.
it wasn't like 20. It was
Yeah, it was a bunch of them.
I think it was
helicopter gunships were mowing people down.
I think it was a company.
Only one guy got in trouble. William Laws Calley Jr. He was a lieutenant, and they charged him with like life in prison, multiple life in prison. 3 days later, Nixon commuted his sentence and sentenced him to house arrest, and then he never really no one got in trouble for it. Because it's like, when you're at war, the Geneva Convention is out, for the most part, out the window. You do what you got to do to survive. These guys had snapped psychologically and took it out on the villagers, but like, you put them in the jungle and you make them go crazy. How can you really blame them for it? I don't know. That's a tough question.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.